The archaeological record is full of startling hints that ancient societies were far more sophisticated than traditional histories suggest. Sites like Göbekli Tepe, Turkey, 9600 BCE, feature massive carved T-shaped pillars arranged in circles and decorated with animal reliefs. The people who built it were still hunter-gatherers by modern definitions. Archaeologists found $15,000 animal bones, all from wild species, and no domesticated crops or livestock. Yet they engineered complex stone circles and tools for processing grains, suggesting they were experimenting with wild cereals long before formal farming. In short, Göbekli Tepe was not a primitive camp, but a monumental ritual center built by people on the verge of the Neolithic transition. Archaeologists excavating Göbekli Tepe's stone portal in Turkey, around 9600 BCE. This elaborate Neolithic site, with its carved pillars and portals, was built by hunter-gatherers. Analysis shows they hunted wild game and even processed wild grains. The Indus Valley Civilization, circa 2600 to 1900 BCE in modern Pakistan, India, offers more surprises. Cities like Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa were laid out on strict rectangular grids and built from fired brick, features not seen again until millennia later. The urban design was highly sophisticated. UNESCO notes, Mohenjo-Daro's lower town was laid out according to strict rules, an early form of urban planning. Each house often had private wells and toilets with drains leading into covered sewers, one of the world's first sanitation systems. Yet we still can't read their writing. Archaeologists have recovered thousands of short inscriptions on small stone seals, but no one has deciphered the Indus script. As Discover magazine explains, there is no consensus on how to read them. It's like seeing an entire library of their records but having no key to unlock it. Göbekli Tepe, 600 BCE. Carved stone circles built by hunter-gatherers, evidence of wild grain processing. Indus Valley, c. 2600–1900 BCE. Cities, Mohenjo-Daro, Harappa, with grid streets and brick houses, public baths and drains, sophisticated urban sanitation. Thousands of seal inscriptions remain undeciphered. Antikythera mechanism, c. 200 BCE. A hand-driven bronze gearwork device, an analog computer, found in a shipwreck. It could predict solar-lunar positions and eclipses decades in advance. Experts note that nothing of comparable complexity appears in the archaeological record again until the 14th century CE. In fact, researchers now believe the mechanism was not unique, and presumably part of a lost Greek tradition of mechanical technology, devices which were typically melted down and thus did not survive. These remarkable artifacts and sites are more than curiosities. They rewrite our story of early civilization. A hunter-gatherer society built stone temples before farming? Planned grid cities with toilets 4,000 years ago? A gear-driven computer in antiquity? These clues all point to a past far richer than the sanitized, linear narrative we usually hear. If true, it begs the question, where did all this knowledge go? The thread of old ideas. Historically, independent centers of knowledge, diverse schools, temples, and traditions thrived until new powers rose. Once an empire or universalist religion took over, one story had to dominate. Late Roman and early Christian leaders treated pagan learning as dangerous. As one study notes, Theodosius-era laws banned pagan teachers entirely, withdrawing their right to lecture, their parousia. In practical terms, philosophers, temple schools, and pagan scholars were silenced or co-opted. Ironically, even church fathers spoke of cleaning out paganism as if it were a disease. Catherine Nixie reports that early Christians described destroying a statue or burning a text as removing a gangrenous limb from society. Nixie's research concludes that in late antiquity, academies were closed, temples shut, artwork looted or destroyed, traditional practices banned, and books burned, by zealots who saw classical culture as demonic. In other words, holding on to old wisdom was viewed as a threat to the new orthodoxy. As George Orwell phrased it, controlling the past means controlling the future, so new powers rewrote or erased the old ones. Across cultures, this isn't a grand conspiracy but a recurring pattern. When a conquering class demanded unity in a single faith, alternative histories were denigrated. The knowledge of the previous era, astronomy, architecture, philosophy, could undermine the authority of kings or priests who claimed a monopoly on truth. So priests and emperors often labeled the old ways heretical or superstitious and purged them. The result was that once vibrant traditions were lost, not just by accident but by design. The Great Erasure. By the medieval era, these patterns culminated in deliberate book and knowledge destruction. Two famous examples stand out. Library of Alexandria, 3rd CE BCE, 391 CE. Founded under the Ptolemies, it was the ancient world's knowledge center. It declined over centuries. Caesar's fire in 48 BCE likely destroyed some scrolls, but by the late Roman period, it had faded. Its last hope was the Serapeum, a temple library that had housed what remained. In 391 CE, Bishop Theophilus of Alexandria, with imperial sanction, vandalized and demolished the Serapeum. Contemporary sources report Christians smashing statues and burning books they deemed pagan. With that act, often called the final destruction of the library, any surviving collection vanished. We can only guess at what wisdom was lost: mathematics, medical texts, philosophical works, all obliterated in an ideological purge. Maya codices, Yucatan, 1562 CE. When the Spanish arrived in Mesoamerica, they found the Maya had books, codices recording history, astronomy, and religion. In July 1562, the Franciscan friar Diego de Landa ordered an auto da fe, the systematic burning of Maya sacred books. De Landa himself wrote, "We found a large number of books, and as they contained nothing not to be seen as superstition and lies of the devil, we burned them all." Contemporary witnesses lamented this act as cultural annihilation. Of the thousands of Maya books that once existed, only 4 codices survive today. Centuries of knowledge, astronomy, mathematics, genealogy, were effectively erased in a single afternoon. These are not isolated incidents but emblematic of the era. Wherever new rulers demanded doctrinal conformity, they saw fit to purge the past. Academic knowledge was dismantled. Libraries were dismantled by warfare and censorship. Temples were converted or destroyed, and teachers were silenced. As Nixie concludes, rather than being accidental casualties, such losses were often knowingly erased by zealots who equated classical knowledge with devilry. Echoes in the ruins, yet erased knowledge often survives in fragments. In myths, in remnants, in navigators' lore, faint echoes of what was once known. Consider what global flood myths. Almost every culture has a story of a deluge. Geologists now note that as the last ice age ended, roughly 15,000 to 6,000 years ago, global sea level rose by hundreds of feet. Rising waters submerged coastlines worldwide, a traumatic event witnessed by early humans. In a Climate magazine report, University of Sunshine Coast geologist Patrick Nunn argues that these flood stories likely preserve real memories passed down for millennia. In other words, legends from Noah and Utnapishtim to flood tales among Native Americans may be distant folk memories of Ice Age floods. Practical wisdom also persisted outside books. For thousands of years, Polynesian navigators crisscrossed the Pacific, settling uninhabited islands. They achieved this without maps or compasses, by keen observation of the stars, ocean swells, winds, and bird patterns. Each island had expert wayfinders who passed their knowledge orally through songs and apprenticeship. This star compass tradition, effectively a living science of ocean navigation, kept going despite colonial interruption. Even today, modern revivals teach these ancient techniques, a testament to knowledge that was nearly lost but never written in stone. Finally, some knowledge is literally embedded in the artifacts themselves. The few clues we have, like the Antikythera mechanism, Göbekli Tepe's pillars, or undeciphered Indus seals, are echoes of entire disciplines. For instance, the Antikythera device is celebrated as the oldest known analog computer, built around 200 BCE to track celestial cycles. Its discovery implies an entire tradition of Hellenistic engineering. As researchers note, the mechanism's refinement indicates that the device was not unique. Yet we have only this one surviving piece. Likewise, massive stone carvings at Göbekli Tepe or scattered Indus glyphs hint at civilizational heights that conventional history barely acknowledges. Each artifact is a faint signal that there was much more going on than the empty lines of our textbooks say. Conclusion: the pattern is clear. High achievements, followed by collapse or suppression, then centuries of silence until rediscovery. Scholars have documented case after case, from burned libraries to lost technologies, where knowledge that could have propelled humanity forward was instead locked away or destroyed for the sake of political or religious unity. We can only imagine where we might be if ancient breakthroughs had survived. Would the Middle Ages have been shorter? Might modern science be centuries further along if ancient engineering and astronomy had been built upon, rather than gone up in flames? Today we uncover these buried truths little by little. Every new dig at sites like Göbekli Tepe, every breakthrough in reading old scripts, every sonar survey of sunken wrecks peels back the veneer of lost history. As Patrick Nunn suggests, many facts about our past were already known, preserved in memory and myth. The question now is whether we will remain passive, letting more knowledge slip away, or actively seek out the wisdom that still lies hidden beneath the ruins. After all, perhaps our civilization isn't the pinnacle of human achievement, just the latest chapter in a story that began thousands of years ago, and which we are only beginning to read.